All right, welcome everybody. You are in the 3 Up for the Nation interest group meeting. Um, Pretty excited about this meeting. We got an excellent presentation lined up. Thank you for joining. It's a little bit earlier than we typically like to go. But with all the things going on in the federal government, try to be flexible. Unfortunately, we don't have our 3DEP project leadership from USGS. They got pulled into a leadership meeting, but I do have a couple of updates to share today. And so we'll be going through a couple of updates on USGS side of things. I'll review some stuff that is going on with regard to 3DEP for the Nation project. Got a couple of reminders, and then we have a presentation from Geocom about how they are integrating 3DEP data as a foundational layer to derive vertical accuracy and improve emergency first response outcomes. And then, of course, I'd like to make some space after the 3DEP for the Nation project updates for anyone who has input or updates, whether it's in your state or in your organization on anything that you would like to update the group with regard to your 3DEP activity. So we'll go ahead and get started. I think we've got a nice critical mass here. On the USGS side of things, the first DCA project was awarded this year for this fiscal year. I know there's been a lot of review of DCA applications, but with federal budgets, things are they're still waiting on some clarity with regard to things on the federal side of things. So I expect more information to be coming out in the next couple of weeks as those budgets solidify and everything percolates down. And then the U.S. mapping coordination site that replaced C-Sketch is currently being tested across federal agencies. It sounds like there's some discrepancies that they're working out. But excited to have that mapping coordination site back up and running. And my best information does indicate that states will be able to add their priorities to this site so that we can have a nice overlay of state and federal priorities like the good old days. Still working on figuring out whether or not local governments or state agencies will independently be able to add those priorities to that map, but I'll keep asking about that, and hopefully I'll have an answer by the next state team meeting next month, or I guess next week. So that's on the USGS side of things. I would take questions, but I don't have a lot more information than what I've already said. So sorry. Hopefully we will have another interest group meeting next month or the month after, and you'll be able to ask questions directly of the USGS acquisition leadership team. All right, so on the NSGIC side of things, our focus areas, really looking to bring private data consumers to the table as funding partners. I had a really good conversation with TomTom last week with their new head of product for all things HD maps. Really cool guy, Mike Gilbert. I used to work with him at Microsoft. And we discussed what would it take to bring private funding to the table. It's something that they'd like to learn more about, and I'm sure a lot of folks out there would like to learn more about. So I'll be working with the USGS leadership team on putting together a framework for what exactly would that look like, right? So how do private data consumers get involved? Right now, that would be through a DCA application. They would just like anyone else, submit their priority or partner with the state, bring some of that funding to the table. And the carrot there would be, as announced in a recent 3DEP federal working group, anyone who participates in the funding of an acquisition has access to the preliminary data release. So you get data a little bit faster, a lot a bit faster, and you can, be part of that cost share to getting data on a more accelerated timeline. So something we're really trying to chase down to bring more folks to the table and secure sustainable funding. So we're not just at the whims of the federal spending limits and budgets. And then this meeting, I hope to get out of this, promoting the value of 3DEP throughout the economy to really drive that message home with our policymakers that the acquisition of 3DEP data and the refresh of that data is a continuing priority for all things from improving emergency first response and saving lives to becoming that nation of builders and accessing and managing our natural resources effectively. And then facilitating derivative products and data distribution, info sharing. So there's a ton of derivative products out there. We're trying to highlight use cases on the 3DEP for the Nation Info Hub. That's the screen grab right there. If you haven't checked it out, please do. We also have a new state LiDAR program highlight series. Pennsylvania's was published last month. If you haven't had a chance to check out the Pennsylvania State LiDAR highlight, I got to speak with Scotty Wall and some of the members of her team to understand how their state organized, how the Commonwealth organizes their LiDAR acquisition, who the key stakeholders are, and what that data is really being used for in the state. I'm trying to work my way through all states. I've got a meeting with New Jersey lined up, working on communications with Connecticut. Garth, I'd love to get Rhode Island into that mix because I know you guys are working together on a lot of things. So really looking to highlight how this data is making an impact across the nation, not just for state and local governments, but also industry and the private sector as well. And then we did publish a letter to USGS about contributed data challenges. That's currently working its way through USGS leadership. There were some initial responses that we got from USGS, hoping to share that out more broadly in the next couple of weeks. Montana, Troy, would love to reach out to Montana. I'll make sure that I do that. I can do that right after this, actually, Troy. I'd love to talk to you guys. Yeah, any other states or really anybody on the call, whether you're a state or from private industry, if you have a use case or you have a 3DEP story that you would like to be told, shoot me a message. You can send me an email or drop a message in the chat, and I'll reach out to you after this to capture that story and make sure that we're really highlighting the value of this data. So with that, I'd love to open up the room a little bit to any participants who have updates with their program, whether you're industry partner on the acquisition side, any cool technology or new additions to your fleet or processing capacity that you have to talk about. Love to hear it. Or if you're a state and you're lining up cool projects, or you got a shiny new data delivery, or you're a consumer and you're just building a new widget, anybody and everybody, if you have an update, would love to hear it. This is an open floor at this point. So I'll make some space. All right. Going once. Cool. I know I get a little fast talky. It can be a little challenging to follow that fast talk. All right, right on. Well, I do have a couple of updates. We have a state team meeting next week at our typical time, 3 p.m. Eastern. Hopefully we'll have a nice opportunity to get some updates from Brian. I know a lot of things have been going on the federal side of things. And then I'm working with the team to line up an interest group meeting with Open Topography. They did a lot of work around the California wildfires in LA. And they'd like to showcase how different versioning can really add value to analysis and response capacity. So that should be a really interesting interest group meeting. Keep your eyes out for the registration. That should be coming out soon. I believe we're targeting the last week in April or the first week in May, but we're waiting on some availability on the USGS side of things to make sure that they're able to make that. All right, my email is down there. If you have any use cases or anything you'd like to send my way, please do. But with that, I'd love to make the space open for our presenters today. On the line, we have Carrie Brennan and Dan Craigie. These guys have a really awesome use case for 3DEP data to help improve emergency first response outcomes by informing vertical accuracy. So with that, I'll stop my share. And Carrie, if you want to share, let me make sure that you have the power to do that. Sorry.
I am working on that now. I just sent a request in.
Great. Let me see. Share. Sorry, Carrie.
No problem.
Can you resend that request?
Oh, there we go.
You got it?
Yes.
Great. All right. Thank you, Carrie.
All right, perfect. Hope everybody is doing well today. Actually, let me just move that toolbar to the right slide or right monitor. So I'm here with my coworker, Dan Craigie, and we're going to be talking about bringing actionable Z-axis data or Z-axis location data with the 3DEP data. And first of all, there we go. Dan, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, Carrie, thank you. And this is very much going to be the Carrie Brennan show, kind of being our lead product manager for the product that Carrie's going to talk about. What I want to do is just take 60 seconds and really just thank NSGIC and the 3DEP program for this opportunity. Obviously, the work put in, Jordan, the work that you're putting in, the support that NSGIC provides, and then all of the partners that are involved in this. Like the way that this came about was very roundabout, as far as, hey, what are some good success stories? I knew we were maybe using some of this data. So my role at Geocom is government strategy. I'm focusing more on government affairs, legislation, not always in the thick of some of the technical stuff. And Jordan and I know each other. But the collaboration that this group has is fantastic. And I just wanted to acknowledge that because it's really what brought us here today, to tell a really great story about how this data is being used, real world applications in public safety. And excited to hear what Carrie has to say. And again, just wanted to say thank you for the team for the opportunity. Carrie, go ahead.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Dan. So why is vertical location important? And we refer to vertical location as the Z-axis component within the data stream of your cell phone data. So when you make a 911 call today, and I know that there are a few people here that are in public safety. Hi, Rhonda, how are you? When a 911 call, as of 2021, all of the major carriers started delivering Z-axis data with the data stream that comes in with your 911 voice call. So over 80% of all 911 calls today originate from cell phones. And if I took a poll of all of the people on this call today, I bet a large majority of us don't actually have a landline phone at home, or even if you did, it might be one that is provided voice over IP through your cable provider or something like that. And honestly, over 80% of citizens spend we spend about 80% of our lives indoors. In fact, there is a commercial that I saw, and I wish I had remembered to write down what it was for, but they're saying that now that number is up to like 92, 93% of our lives are spent indoors. And if you think about your day, like your average day, if you're like me, you work from home. I jokingly say I'm a mushroom because I work in my unfinished basement, and I literally get up in the morning, get ready, and I head downstairs and I sit in this like kind of slightly dark and dingy basement. And then I get up at the end of the day and I go to the gym, I might go grocery shopping, and then I come right back and I'm inside. So I might see daylight unless I force myself outside. I might see daylight for like an hour a day. So that 80% of time is true. And I'm probably one that's pushing that average much higher. When you are in a building, whether it is the office building that you work in or you are traveling, of course, we are right around spring break time. A lot of people are traveling to new locations with their families. Locating a 911 call indoors can be a challenge. And the reason for that is we can get the address. We have good opportunity to understand, and we've been working on getting the site structure address point for the last 20 plus years, and we have really good 911 data for that. But once we get to a building, whether it's a large shopping mall, a hotel, a large office complex, once you are inside that building, it can be challenging to get down to the granular level of exactly where you are, and especially on what floor you are on. And because of that, fatalities have occurred as a result of that because of delays in service. So what we're doing is we are looking to enhance dispatchable location. Now, we've got a lot of words up on the screen right now, and I won't bother reading them to you, but basically a dispatchable location is a validated street address for a 911 calling party, plus supplemental enhanced information like the suite or apartment. Honestly, if you are at a place like a stadium or an arena, you can get right down to the section and even the seat number. What we want to do is, for things like multi-story buildings, we want to be able to have the dispatchable location get you down to the room or even the seat number. I happen to be visiting a friend in the Pacific Northwest right now, and there's a large Google building nearby. If I went into that, I wouldn't know where I was. And to be able to call 911 and know what floor I was on, what cubicle I was in, would be very important to be able to quickly and easily enable first responders to get to me. And that's really what we are looking to do in these situations. Now, by doing so, what we are doing is we're trying to enhance and speed up the access in which first responders and those first responders, our frontline telecommunicators in the 911 center, can get access to data to help somebody that is having an absolutely horrible day. So why is a dispatchable location important? When we look at it in a two-dimensional environment, you'll see the cell phone call right here. The circle around that is our radius of confidence in which an X and Y location of a cell phone call. That's pretty standard, plus or minus maybe 50 meters or so. In this particular case, that covers at least half a dozen or more buildings. And if you look very closely, this is a rural area, you start to look at it and you'll see that there are silos here, there are barns that all have a good elevation to them. Now, why is dispatchable location important? When we take that from a 2D to a 3D environment and you start looking at it in areas that have taller buildings, well, if there was a 911 call from this particular building that has multiple stories in it, I might get the address of that location, but as you can see, it is a 20, 25 story or more high rise. I don't know exactly where that call has initiated from, other than it is coming from the building. And to be able to clear that building out is really a challenge because first responders have to clear every floor. To be able to narrow down the search of where a call initiated from to say maybe the 11th through 14th floor, first responders are still going to clear every floor, but if they can find the person in need by narrowing down that search, that's absolutely critical. And time certainly does save lives in these cases. So what are we doing actually with the 3-depth data? Geocom has a patented process that we have utilized that takes that 3-depth LiDAR data and translates data that's coming in on the 911, either the ALI stream, the automatic location information, or the PIDAFlow data, which is the newer data stream. And the Z-axis data is coming in as a height above ellipsoid. Now, as the geographers on the call understand, a height above ellipsoid, that comes in as a value that is not easily translatable into a, I will say, a real world number. I live in Indianapolis, Indiana. Hi, Steve. And where I live in the northeast side of Indianapolis, I actually went out with a GPS unit and surveyed my height above ellipsoid. And the height above ellipsoid where I live in Indianapolis is -33, simply because the ellipsoid is below height above terrain. As a first responder, I'm going to see -33 coming in on my data stream popping up on my screen. And what is the first thing I'm going to think? -33, oh, that person is below ground. But that's not actually the case. So what we need to do is provide customers or provide telecommunicators and first responders with actionable data. So by taking that digital elevation model, applying calculations to it to convert the data into a height above terrain, and of course the height above terrain, depending on where you are, will change. So the height above ellipsoid in the example I've got up on the screen here is 200 meters, and converting it will change depending on where the caller location is. So the building on the right, the height above terrain, because it's higher up on a hill in this case, ends up being 2.5 meters above terrain, or essentially mean sea level, whereas the height above terrain in the multi-story building ends up being 18 meters. That's actually more helpful. Of course, in America, we tend to not use the metric system, so meters can confuse some people. Then what we can do is, by using additional data sets, we can take that information and convert it into more actionable information, including an estimated floor level. So we can take that info and say the caller is estimated to be on the 3rd floor of the multi-story building, plus or minus, say, 3 meters, because that's typically what the accuracy of the call is that's coming in, especially if it is coming in and the data coming in on the 911 call is coming from what's known as device-based hybrid location on your cell phone. Typically, the accuracy of that is about plus or minus 3 meters. So it could be on the second floor, it could be on the fourth floor, but we're pretty confident they're on the third floor in this case. Or they're on the first floor of that one-story building. So what we do is we take that information and then we can utilize it in multiple different ways. Oops. So we can display it on a two-dimensional indoor map. Indoor mapping is really one of the hot topics, I will say, in public safety right now, in which we are going from a single site structure address point to really starting to display data in 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions. And I would say it's really important at this point, if you are looking at any indoor data, to really look at it from a GIS perspective so that it is truly GIS data, it's vector data, and it can be rendered out in 3D like the bottom image here. Because eventually everything is going to be in that 3D world. We may not be there today, but you don't want to have to rebuild these data sets in the future. And then also we can textually display this data using the address for the dispatchable location, floor, getting down to the room number, you know, obviously the city, state, all of that. So vertical location, our VLS product, which is what we refer to it as, can be displayed in a couple of different manners. Option 1 is an application that can supply the value via a URL parameter, or it can be API driven. And that API can be integrated into third-party applications. You can see on this particular screen, we've got that there is a building detected. It's got the address, the building name, the building name, the height above ground. The caller is estimated to be on the 19th floor. This is considered a low accuracy estimate. The reason for that is because we are using the building footprint data and not an indoor map that has also been surveyed. When we use the 3-depth GIS data, the 3-depth LiDAR data, and an indoor data model that has been surveyed to get all of the floor heights, then that is considered a high accuracy data set. Because those 2 data sets combined become really highly accurate. The reason for that is with things like a raw building shell, we don't know if the first floor of a building, like a hotel in this case, if anybody's been to the Esri user conference and you've gone to the Hilton Bayfront, the first floor might be 20 feet tall or 30 feet tall, but then every room on top of that is only maybe 10 feet tall, and we don't have that accurately in this data set yet. So, some of the added benefits of using all of this data is, from a public safety standpoint, there is tactical mapping that can be done. So tactical visualization. So we can look at this data in a 3D format so it can be visualized, spun around. This happens to be some open source building shells that Esri has put out. They just announced at the partner conference last week, the week before last, that they are integrating with some of the Google building footprints. We have not started working on integrating those in yet, but we will start, and those are more 3D realistic. So hopefully Jordan will invite Dan and I back in the not too distant future, and we'll be able to show you some updates with more 3D realistic renderings as well. As well, we can do other tactical visualizations like measuring the height of buildings, and then as well line of sight measurements. So in the example on the right-hand side of the screen, this would be a situation if there was something like pre-planning for any active shooter incidents. Anything that is green, any of those green lines are where the dot has been placed, is a line of sight. So if there was an active shooter on the top of that building, they could have a clean line of sight to anywhere those green lines happen to be hitting. So anything red is clear. This happens to be a hotel in downtown Des Moines, Iowa, and the second building is the United States District Courthouse. So you can see how these are important for situational awareness when there are potentially large court cases or there are dignitaries visiting. And all of this is possible and rendered because we are using the base data layers of the 3-depth data. Without that foundational layer, now we're not utilizing this data to display, but it is the foundation, it is the concrete that this house is built on. And real world situation, this application is built into Rapid SOS, which is a public safety application that is utilized in approximately 5,600 911 centers across the United States. They actually call it the estimated floor level, but it is Geocom's vertical location service. So if any 911 centers that you are aware of are using Rapid SOS, they've changed the name since this slide was created, whether it is their portal or their premium applications. It is accessible. You do not need to have indoor maps available, although it is beneficial to have. When you click on in a 911 call, regardless of whether there is a building there or not, you can still utilize the vertical location service, and it will help you determine if there is a building there and how high up the caller is. So again, we're using the Hilton Bayfront in this particular case, and the caller is estimated to be on the 24th floor in this particular case. Real world situations, we get statistics from this partner about every 6 months on the usage of this application. And I find it very interesting, the statistics of the last 6 months of 2024. you might find these interesting as well. The 911 centers and counties that used these the most included Rock Island County, Illinois, Marion County, Indiana, which makes me feel very good because I happen to live in Marion County, Indiana, so it's very nice to know that it's being really well utilized where I live. Las Vegas Metro, Pennington County, South Dakota, which is where like Mount Rushmore is. So if you think about it, that's quite a rural county, although Rapid City, South Dakota is there. But still, I'm going to suspect that they are using it outside of the urban area of Rapid City. And then Fairfax County Public Safety, which is one of the top 10 busiest 911 centers in the country. So a really good and diverse mix of communities. Rock Island, Illinois is a urban and rural, or I would say more of a suburban community, it being one of the quad cities right on the Illinois-Iowa border. And, you know, I suspect that there are some of you that are here going, but I live in a very rural state, and, you know, we don't have a lot of high-rise buildings. You know, and I'm going to pick on Steve a little bit as well here because we both live in the state of Indiana. We have Indianapolis, we have South Bend, we've got Fort Wayne, Lafayette. So we've got a few larger cities, but the majority of the state is very rural, except that every year you hear about the fact that there are farmers who get stuck in corn or bean silos that are 2, 3, and 4 stories high because it is a very agrarian community. And this is just a use case for non-urban areas. What the first responders do is they need to know how high up in that grain silo the victim is, the farmer is, so that they can cut a hole just below them and let all of the grain out to release the beans. So very random story. I do apologize for that, but it is one of those things that something like a vertical location service, you know, elevation is a thing that it does not matter if you're in an urban or a vertical area. Vertical location service is important. All of the examples I have shown you today are above ground, but the vertical location service that we utilize will also show you if a caller actually is below ground as well. So if they're calling from a lower level basement, you know, below ground in a parking garage, it will show you if they are below ground as well. One of the really nice things about it is that the 3-depth coverage, because it is across all of the states in the United States, there are not gaps in the coverage. So regardless of whether you are again, in a rural area or an urban area, you would have access to this application if you are using a Rapid SOS application, if you happen to be using something like say a Rapid Deploy application, anything like that. I should have warned you all at the beginning. I am a talker and I get very passionate about these things. So I can talk for days and days about this and indoor maps. So Just a little bit about Geocom as well. So if you are not familiar with Geocom, this is our 30th anniversary year. We have been around for 30 years, and we are a public safety GIS firm, which means that we focus specifically on GIS for public safety. And we have worked on 23 statewide public safety projects across the nation. We've got patented processes, as I mentioned earlier, for vertical location service, indoor mapping technologies. We work a lot with AI and machine learning to enhance the data creation, data conversion processes. We have what I would consider one of the best teams in the world working on our QA/QC of the data to ensure that what our AI and machine learning is doing is also exactly what was on the source data, so that the quality that you are receiving is exactly what you need to do your work with. And we do have some on-premise solutions, but the majority of our work is done using hosted and managed GIS solutions. So all of our data is in what we refer to as our public safety content library, including our vertical location service, which is available through highly secure, highly available hosted APIs. With that, Dan, I'm going to see if you have anything else you would like to mention before I kind of open things up to questions.
All good, Carrie. Great information.
All right. So I threw a ton of information at everybody, and hopefully I didn't go too quickly.
That was great, Carrie.
And I apologize for, calling out both Steve and Rhonda, but they're the names that I did recognize.
So, Carrie, we have a question in the chat, and then I also have a question to follow up. Keith Weber from Idaho State is asking, does the accuracy of this service require location be turned on for a person's smartphone?
That's a great question. So from a 911 perspective, the answer is no, because the 911 call, regardless of regardless of whether you have location on or not, the 911 call is still going to locate you. The location tracking on your phone is more if you want to have location on for things like social media and things like that. The location coming in through your device-based hybrid location is, I'm going to say, a permanently on thing. You don't get to turn that off.
Yeah.
And that's for safety reasons.
Thank you, Carrie. I've got a big question. How does Geocom access the 3DEP data? Are you downloading it on a project basis from the national map, or are you using any sort of web services in order to get refresh?
Yeah, great question. We're actually using the web services. We've tried downloading it, but it is not a small data set by any stretch of the imagination. So we actually just we've cached all of the queries essentially, and then we access it through web services.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the web services, and you always have the most up-to-date data. I mean, it's depending on your system architecture, I think it makes a lot more sense than downloading the data. Awesome. And another question I have is, have you noticed a big difference between, now that the 3DEP program is in its 6th official year, we have a range of data spanning QL2, QL1, and then what they're calling QL1 HD, I believe. Have you noticed a difference in the vertical accuracy between QL2 data sets in places? They tend to be like more rural and remote, and QL1 data sets, which tend to be hitting the scene more often in like urban areas, and like Florida and the Northeast is getting a lot of QL1 data at this point.
So we have specific areas that we use as our test environments, and we definitely have noticed some improvement in accuracy. Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll hand it over to anyone else who has any questions. Does anyone else have any questions for Carrie or Dan?
I would say that anybody that is working with any of your public safety agencies, 911 agencies, if they are not currently receiving the Z-Access data, they could actually be receiving the Z-Access data. They just may not have it turned on in their alley stream. And if they are a Rapid SOS customer, they would just need to make sure that that was configured in their configuration panel to start using that. And it is a very useful tool. And honestly, the more it gets utilized, the more it gets broadly accepted, and the more people start to understand the value of things like 3DEP data and how vital it is for vertical location service, for understanding how to utilize and convert height above ellipsoid to height above terrain to an actionable data component like an estimated floor.
Yeah. And so that Carrie, really, this is a question I want to ask, and maybe I should make this a standard question that I issue ahead of time so you can be prepared, but hope I don't put you on the spot too much. Without 3DEP data, how would Geocom or other services find that vertical accuracy and the difference between height above ellipsoid and height above terrain? And if that comes at a significant cost, what would the implications be if you didn't have 3DEP data as a foundational data layer?
That is a great question. It would be very, very challenging is the best way to describe it. So we would more than likely have to talk with local jurisdictions, go to county governments, and see if they have flown LiDAR data. Maybe go to states and see if they had flown LiDAR when they've flown aerial projects, and see if we could get access to that. The legwork would be much more challenging. The coverage of the data would be much more spotty, and the quality of the data would not be nearly as consistent.
No. Awesome. And I mean, just the downstream implications of that, everything becomes more expensive. It takes longer, and then these critical response teams don't have as easy access to the data, and that, I mean, that has a big impact. Dan, you raise your hand. I don't want to take too much of the space here.
Yeah, just want to expand on what Carrie shared, and something that I really value from the public safety ecosystem is, I think without this, you have and have-nots. And uh, what a fantastic program and opportunity to ensure the entire country in one fell swoop has access to this type of information. Because as Carrie said, right, we're going to have to, either we fly in super dense areas, because from a market perspective, that's likely where we're going to get the most financial incentives, uh, or we find entities who have already done this because they have the resources available to them, and then there's just going to be entities that don't have it. So in this case, every life matters. Everyone who dials 911 should get the same level of service, and this very much supports that effort. And I think that's something, Jordan, that we can continue to support and share, is the value of that information.
Awesome. I love it. I definitely want to make sure that we get everyone gets a chance to ask your questions. But I think that's a pretty awesome note to end on. Unless anyone else, Ron, I see you're unmuted. Do you have any questions or input here, Mr. Wilkinson? Sorry, I don't mean to put the unmuted folks on blast here. Thank you so much, Carrie and Dan. Really appreciate this very tangible, real world example of how 3DEP data is making a real impact to improve outcomes for emergency first response that result in life-saving care being administered in the fastest pace possible. Really appreciate you guys. I'll have this recording up on the NSGIC knowledge base and available for distribution within the end of the week. Really appreciate your guys' time, and anyone else who's on the call, if you have a use case or if you'd like to capture your 3DEP story, please reach out. My email is always available, and I'm looking forward to the next interest group meeting. We'll be hearing from Open Topography on their use of multiple vintages of 3DEP data and LiDAR data to assess the LA wildfires and create real action plans out of that catastrophe. All right, guys, have an excellent week. Thanks for joining today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you all.